Imagine standing on the side of a quiet country road when the ground starts to tremble, not from an earthquake, but from a 100-ton load crawling past you at walking speed. Towering above, a British-built monster lorry groans under the weight of a turbine, a tank, or even a train carriage. These aren't your average trucks. These are the giants of British roads. And today, we're diving into the biggest heavy-haul lorries the UK has ever engineered. If there's one truck that defined British heavy haulage in the mid-20th century, it's the Scammell Contractor. Built in Watford from the 1950s to the early 1980s, the Contractor was designed to handle the heaviest loads Britain could throw at it, often exceeding 100 tons gross train weight. These 6x4 or 8x4 monsters were typically powered by either Rolls-Royce C8 SFL V8 diesel engines producing around 333 horsepower, or later Cummins engines like the NTC 335, delivering sheer torque for steep inclines and slow, controlled haulage. The Contractor featured hub reduction axles, air-assisted steering, and some of the most robust ballast boxes ever seen. They were the backbone of fleets like Pickford and Winds, tasked with moving everything from transformers to nuclear components. Today, fully restored Scammell Contractors can be seen at heritage rallies and museums. Their unmistakable stance, deep rumble, and historic liveries make them crowd favourites, not just trucks, but rolling monuments to British engineering. If you think the Scammell Contractor is an absolute unit, and honestly, how could you not? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button for more legendary British machines. And while you're at it, drop a comment below. What's the biggest truck you've ever seen on the road? We might just feature your story in a future video. Foden's 8x4 heavy haulage tractors from the 1970s and 1980s were some of the most respected British-built trucks ever made. Manufactured in Sandbach, Cheshire, these trucks featured twin-steer front axles and double-drive rear bogies, giving them excellent traction and control under extreme loads. Powered by engines like the Gardner 6LXB or Cummins NTC 335, they regularly hauled gross train weights exceeding 120 tons, depending on trailer configuration and permits. The chassis was built to handle severe stress, and Foden's signature lightweight but strong fiberglass cab offered drivers both durability and decent visibility. Their reliability in harsh working conditions made them favourites among heavy haul operators like Robert Wynne & Sons and Winds, who used them to transport power station equipment, transformers, and industrial machinery across Britain. Many examples survive in preservation, regularly showcased at events like Truckfest or the Great Dorset Steam Fair. They remain a proud example of British engineering during a golden era of homegrown heavy truck production. The Scammell S24 was like the Contractor's smarter, more polished younger sibling, still tough as nails, but with a bit more brain under the bonnet. Built in the late 1970s through to the 1980s, it was Scammell's last major heavy-haul model before the brand was shut down in 1988. Fitted with Cummins NTC 350s or Rolls-Royce Eagle diesels pushing over 300 horsepower, it could tow loads tipping 150 tons, if you had the nerves and the permits. The cab looked more like something from a spaceship than a truck, squarer, with improved visibility and comfort. Drivers finally had a cab that didn't feel like a coal shed on wheels. The military loved it too. The S4 hauled tanks like they were wheelie bins. Civilian hauliers used them to move turbines, transformers, or even entire buildings. You'll see restored S24s turning heads at events like Truckfest. And trust us, when one of these beasts fires up, conversations stop and cameras come out. If British lorries had a gentleman class, the ERF C-series would be wearing a tie and still pulling 120 tons uphill in the rain. Built from 1974 into the mid-1980s in Sandbach, the C-series was ERF's answer to high-capacity haulage with a dash of refinement. Underneath that bold, squared-off cab was a Cummins NTC 350 or Rolls-Royce Eagle engine, often paired with a Fuller Road Ranger gearbox, a combo that delivered both grunt and grace. Operators loved it. The cab was roomy and quiet, and it didn't shake you to bits like some of its rivals. You could haul a massive power transformer across the Pennines and still feel your spine at the end. Companies like Pickford's, Econofreight, and Winds use these for serious jobs, and for good reason. Plenty of C-series tractors have survived thanks to preservationists, and you can find footage of them crawling up hills with turbine blades behind them like it's just another Tuesday. The Scammell Samson wasn't just a truck. It was a rolling battering ram with an appetite for absurd loads. Developed in the 1970s as a heavy-duty offshoot to the Scammell Crusader, the Samson came with an 8x4 configuration, a reinforced chassis, and a Detroit diesel 8V71 engine pumping out around 270 horsepower. It was purpose-built to move serious weight. and it did so with all the subtlety of a wrecking ball in a china shop. Operators used Samson to haul construction plant, recovery equipment, and even the occasional military tank. The cab was unmistakably crusader, narrow, tilted forward, and not exactly built for comfort. Drivers joked you didn't get in a Samson, you strapped in and braced yourself, but once rolling, these things pulled like oxen. Samsons were popular with British recovery fleets and heavy hauliers who needed sheer brawn over beauty. Today, a few survive in preservation, and when they show up at vintage events, you can bet they're still the loudest in the yard. The Atkinson Borderer was the no-nonsense workhorse of British haulage, a proper old-school brute with square lines, a growling Gardner engine, and a cab that smelled permanently of diesel and tea. Built in the late 1960s and early 70s in Walton le Dale, Lancashire, the 6x4 heavy-duty version was ideal for serious hauling, often moving 100-ton loads when paired with multi-axle trailers. Under the skin, it was pure British engineering. Tough chassis, leaf springs stiff as concrete, and a Gardner 6LXB or 6LX engine that might not win drag races but would run reliably until the sun burned out. These trucks were favourites of regional hauliers moving transformers, steelwork and plant machinery. If it fit on a trailer, the Borderer would move it. The cab was built like a shed and twice as loud, but drivers respected them, because when lesser lorries quit, the Borderer just kept going. A few beautifully restored examples still rumble their way around vintage shows, complete with original Win or Pickford's livery. By the late 1990s, Foden was gearing up for its final act, and the Alpha was its swan song. Built from 1998 until the brand's closure in 2006, the Foden Alpha heavy haulage versions came in 6x4 and 8x4 configurations and were powered by Cummins ISX or Caterpillar C15 engines, with outputs reaching over 500 horsepower. That meant they could confidently move loads in the 120 to 150 ton gross train weight range with the right trailer setup. Unlike the rugged, old-school Fodens before it, the Alpha came with a more aerodynamic cab, modern suspension, and a layout that gave drivers a break from the usual spine-rattling abuse. Operators like Hina Haulage and Allalees ran Alphas on some of the UK's biggest loads, including wind turbines and refinery vessels. Drivers liked the blend of power and visibility. Plus, the dash didn't look like it came from a tractor in 1952. These are now rare beasts, but you'll still find a few Alphas in service, and they still mean business. The Scammell Explorer was never designed for the catwalk. It was built for battlefields, bogs, and breakdowns. Introduced in 1945 and produced into the early 1960s, the Explorer was originally a 6x6 military recovery vehicle, powered by a 10.35-litre Meadows petrol engine pushing around 130 horsepower. That doesn't sound like much today, but back then, it was more than enough to yank a broken-down tank out of the mud. But here's where things get fun. After their military service, many Explorers were converted into civilian heavy hauliers. Operators found them perfect for hauling plant machinery across construction sites and unpaved roads where conventional trucks would get stuck faster than you can say tow rope. With its massive winch, rugged chassis, and portal axles, the Explorer wasn't fast, but it was nearly unstoppable. Today, preserved Explorers are fan favourites at vintage rallies, and if you've never seen one fire up that big straight six, belt out a roar and chug forward like a steam engine, you're missing a piece of living history. By the 1990s, ERF had evolved into a brand that combined old-school toughness with new-era practicality, and the EC-series was proof of that. Built in sandbatch from 1993 to the early 2000s, the EC-series was available in heavy-duty 6x4 and 8x4 variants, often fitted with Cummins M11 or N14 engines, producing up to 525 horsepower. That made it capable of gross train weights well over 120 tons, depending on the configuration. The cab was a big step forward, more aerodynamic, quieter, and roomier than its C-series predecessor. Drivers who spent long hours hauling wind turbine blades or industrial generators appreciated the smooth ride and better visibility. Operators like Siddle Cook and Cadzo Heavy Haulage used ECs across the UK and Europe, especially for long-distance heavy loads. Today, the EC-series remains a popular sight in vintage trucking circles, and when you hear one of these Cummins-powered beasts thunder past, you'll understand why ERF had such a loyal following. The Denby Eco Link is one of the most ambitious lorries Britain ever built, and also one of the most restricted. Designed by Denby Transport in the early 2000s, this 25.25-metre twin-trailer setup was engineered to haul up to 60 tons while reducing emissions, road congestion, and operating costs. It was essentially a British-designed B-double. Already popular in places like Sweden and the Netherlands, built using a modified ERF or DAF tractor unit, the EcoLink connected a standard-length semi-trailer to a dolly and a second trailer, allowing it to move more freight using less fuel. It featured intelligent steering systems, advanced braking, and a surprisingly tight turning circle for something longer than a blue whale. The truck was tested and proven safe, but UK laws at the time didn't allow it on public roads. Ironically, it's now fully legal and operational in the Netherlands, proving the concept was sound, just ahead of its time. The EcoLink remains a clever, eco-friendly British hauler that never got its full chance at home. Now, these weren't just trucks, they were Britain's mechanical giants, forged in steel and grit to haul the impossible. From the thunderous Scammell Contractors to the clever Denby EcoLink, each of these lorries tells a story of raw power, precision, and British ingenuity. If you've enjoyed this trip down the heavy haul highway, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling us your favourite beast, because when it comes to hauling heavy, no one did it quite like the British.